Tomorrow marks 5 years since the deadly mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School. CBSN sent a team to Colorado Springs to hear from people on both sides of the gun control debate. It's part of our upcoming special, Mass Shootings 5 Years After Sandy Hook.
The conversation at times shifted to the effectiveness of school shooter drills and if they are instilling fear in students. Let's take a listen.
This week is the 5-year anniversary of Sandy Hook, which was one of the worst mass shootings in the country. 28 people were killed. A lot of them were 6- and 7-year-olds. Do you guys remember where you were when you heard about that shooting and what your reaction was?
I feel like that was a really big turning point for America, in my opinion, in that not providing any substantive legislation after that point, in my mind, made it okay that these kids died. No one seemed to care. I mean, if our most innocent and vulnerable population is not being protected a little bit better and there's not going to be some move towards let's rethink our position, it's never going to matter.
I was newly married, obviously, didn't have a kid at the time, and I didn't understand the mentality of it. Now I have a kid, and I couldn't imagine what those families went through, and how do you prevent that tragedy, and how do you stop that? I wish I had an answer for that.
I got an email a couple of weeks ago that my daughter was participating in active shooter drills, and they were teaching them to hide. So they wanted to alert the parents in case the kids came home and talked about, we hid from Miss Melissa today. And I just found it so disheartening, and honestly, it made me really angry, and I felt like someone's right to own a piece of metal was infringing on my child's right to live. It frustrates me immensely that we have to have those. And I feel like Newtown was the big turning point for that.
When I went to school, it was fire drills and tornado drills, and unfortunately now it's hide from Miss Melissa. You know, it's kind of back to when kids used to have to hide under the desk in case there was a bombing or something, you know. It is the world as it is, and I'd rather have my daughter, when she gets to that point, be prepared. It sucks. I'm never going to disagree with that, but I'd rather have her know than not know and be open to it.
And for more on these drills, let's bring in Dr. Jamie Howard. She's a clinical psychologist at the Child Mind Institute here in New York. Doctor, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Hi.
These drills, some critics would say that they instill fear into these kids. Would you agree with that assessment?
If it's done properly, it shouldn't make kids too anxious. We really want to focus on these being safety drills rather than active shooter drills or emphasizing the dangerous language.
Yeah, when I was talking to some of the people who work here who have kids in school, it was clear there was a range in the ways that schools deal with these drills, that some schools told them that they were just dealing with a general emergency. Other schools told them, this is what happens if a bad man comes to the school. This is how you act. What do you do as a parent when your child comes home and says, we did this drill because somebody might come to the school with a weapon? How do you talk to your kids about this?
I think you want to be honest, but not scare them unnecessarily. So yes, that's one thing that could happen. There could also be a fire. That's why we do fire drills. We also talk to you about not talking to strangers. There are certain things that are dangerous in the world, and you want to be prepared for them. When something dangerous happens, your fight or flight response goes off, and it's not the time to sort of problem solve and think through what to do. So these drills are helpful because we can't really rely on ourselves to think rationally in those moments. And so I would focus on what to do rather than the scary situation that might occur.
Right. But how do you do that with kids? You talk about fire drills, and we all remember doing fire drills as kids, but basically we were just lined up and we would just walk outside, enjoy the fresh air for a few moments, and then go right back in. These are kids that are being asked to get below your desk, hide in this room, hide in that room. It's a little bit different, I think.
Yeah, it's different. The protocol is different. It doesn't have to be so terrifying still. You can sit under your desk. The emphasis should be on being quiet, right? And really the onus is on the grown-ups, especially with elementary school students. The emphasis should be on the grown-ups taking charge and telling the kids what to do, and they need to be prepared to follow instructions and follow the instructions very seriously.
Some schools really go far with this. They have, men dressed up in masks, pretend guns, pretend blood even. What's your take on that?
That I do not recommend. I think that's unnecessary. That's scaring kids more than is necessary to keep them safe. We just want them to know what to do so they can do it quickly and not have to lose precious time when an active shooter is in the room thinking through what to do.
What do you tell a kid or a kid's parents, who I'm sure are furious if they haven't been alerted? They may know that there was a drill coming up at school today, but then to hear the kids say, oh, these masked men came into the room and did this and that, I'm sure there's a fine line between safety and instilling a level
Fear.
of anxiety and fear with these kids.
Yeah, well, so I would have parents talk with the school and have the parents sort of come together to agree on what would be most helpful to keep their kids safe, but without causing them undue anxiety.
Do you have some parents that are like, you know what, okay, it may cause a little anxiety, but safety is paramount here.
Yeah.
No
Right.
matter what it does to my kid in the short term, safety is the key issue.
You don't want to sacrifice any safety, for sure, but I don't think that having masked men come in would do that. I don't think it significantly increases the safety. I just think it adds a level of terror that's developmentally inappropriate.
Yeah.
We've been talking about little kids, elementary school kids, but you know, we've seen situations like this happen in colleges, and there is kind of an argument that says instead of just training people to be passive, maybe we ought to train them to be active in terms of protecting themselves. Maybe we should train them to throw a book at someone who comes in or something like that. When it gets to the college level, do you think we can ante up these drills? Is that appropriate?
Yeah, I think so. Where I work at Child Mind Institute, we had an active shooter training, and we had police officers come in and explain to us sort of the gold standard protocol, which is to first run out if you can, then barricade if you can't, and then if you have no other option, to use force and to go after the assailant as quickly as you can. And yeah, adults can handle that, but that's not a responsibility for a child.
Yeah. It's a new norm. I mean, I was talking
Sadly,
to some of the writers that work here that are a little bit older, and they remember duck and cover.
Sure.
And you know, when you were trying to hide under your desk to protect against an atomic bomb, which really would have done nothing at all. At least this training might actually save a life.
Yeah,
right?
It's like what you heard the gentleman in the piece there before. It's like the only drills I remember are fire drills and possibly tornado warning drills, things like that. But the narrative has changed, and when we have to report on these stories, as devastating as it is to have to document what's happened, to actually be these kids or parents that are in these situations, you want them to be prepared the best they can, and we want the same for our own kids too. We want them to be prepared, but done in a way that doesn't affect them at home.
Yeah, definitely. Dr. Jamie Howard, you're from the Child Mind Institute. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You can see more of the conversation on guns and mass shootings tomorrow night during our special report, Mass Shootings 5 Years After Sandy Hook, which will air right here on CBSN.